Once there was a man from Bethlehem named Elimelech, and he had a wife named Naomi. And the two of them had two sons, they had two boys. One day, Elimelech died. And so, to continue the family line, both the sons got married. But even after 10 years, neither couple had a child. Until one day, both the sons died, leaving Naomi with two daughters-in-law. Seeing that she had no grandchildren, Naomi encouraged her two daughters to go back home to their own people. She had nothing to offer them. She didn't have any resources. She wanted to give them maybe a second chance at life. One of her daughter-in-laws left, but Ruth decided to stay. So now we have two women with barely a relation to one another, trying to make it out on their own, fighting for survival. And this is where Ruth chapter 2 begins. Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone whose eyes I find favor." Okay, so right away, Ruth and Naomi, they're amongst the clansmen of their relatives, although they don't know anybody at this point. Ruth is choosing to glean leftover grain that is fallen during the harvest. Remember, Ruth is not Hebrew, okay? She's a Moabite. And so the law of Moses, it makes allowances for strangers and the poor to go behind people who are harvesting to pick up grain that falls on the ground. And the law was set so that it would provide for the poor while at the same time keeping the rich from just hoarding everything. Naomi said to her daughter, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. And as it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they answered. Boaz asked the overseer of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters.' She came into the field and has remained here from morning until now, except for a short rest in the shelter." So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. And I have told the men not to lay a hand on you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. And she asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes, that you would notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about you and what you've done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you didn't know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." "May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord," she said. "You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I did not have the standing of one of your servants." Again, Ruth is confirming that she's not family, right? She is a Gentile by law, and Boaz does not owe her anything. Verse 14. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread, and dip it in the wine vinegar." And when she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. And as she got up to glean, Boaz gave orders to his men, "Let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her." Now, in this story, certainly Boaz is beginning to have feelings for Ruth. He was probably a little older than her, so it might have been love, genuine, or it may just have been his deep concern that was already built into his nature. But regardless, I think this portion of the story has something more to offer than just the beginnings of a romance. Naomi and Ruth, they seek Boaz out as an option because, sure, he is a living relative, but also because he is a man of means. Boaz obviously has property, has resources, must have substantial income. He has hired servants, must be a leader in some regard that he would have to offer commands to his servants. And so Ruth takes a risk, initially, we see, in working in his fields, because Boaz has to instruct his workers not to harm her, right? But the risk pays off. Through time, Ruth gains his trust. Boaz begins to help her and basically saves her life. Can you imagine a 10-year period in which your husband and both your sons die? To a woman, that would be a death sentence. Without family to fall back on, these women would have been homeless. There wasn't much for them to be able to earn a living on. There are just not that many options. And the possibility of them getting married again, especially in their older years, was almost impossible. And more than likely, Naomi's parents are dead. And so in desperation, she's forced to seek out any relation she can find. And so a little further down in verse 20, when Naomi discovers that Boaz is doing for her little family, she says of Boaz, "The Lord bless him," Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. "He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead." She added, "That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Now, the word redeemer in the Hebrew is the word ga'al, and it's used all through the Hebrew scriptures. Chiefly, we see it used a lot in how God describes Israel being saved from bondage. We think of the word redeem like we would think of a coupon in our world, right? We turn something in, and we get something in exchange. I give you a coupon, you give me 25 cents off cat food, right? That's redemption. Naomi calls Boaz a guardian redeemer, and this word comes up 23 times in the book of Ruth. Naomi means it as Boaz is acting as a close relative, even though he's probably not directly related by blood. Remember, Boaz is a relative of her husband, so we don't exactly know how. The Jewish historian Rashi says that it's possible Boaz would have been a cousin to Ruth's husband. In other words, Boaz would have been Naomi's nephew on her husband's side, okay? So now he is showing favor to Ruth, who is a Moabite. He's not under any family obligation to help these women. In fact, if you continue to read the story, Boaz even says that someone who is more closely related to them is still living. And because Boaz is acting as though he were family, Naomi calls him a guardian redeemer, and she praises his generosity and his kindness. Because in chapter 2, the bottom line is Boaz is saving these two women. And for a while there, I'm sure they were stressed out, worried, but now Boaz uses what he has. He has wealth, he has resources, he has a position in the community to help these two ladies and to treat them like close family. And we know it's significant because Naomi doesn't ever say, well, he's just doing his duty. He's supposed to do this. This is what I would have expected. This is what he's required to do. No, in fact, quite the opposite. Ruth, her presence among the workers was dangerous. She took a risk just being there. When Boaz first shows up, he doesn't know who she is. He has to ask somebody. But rather than throw her out, he takes her in, he provides for her, he invites her to his table, and he treats her like close family. Boaz became family to Ruth. The two women needed grace, they needed salvation, and Boaz became those things to them. The redeeming was this exchange that took place because he had the means, he had the resources, and he had the willingness to do this. He was able to save them by becoming close family. Boaz's example of being a guardian redeemer, it's also the same example we see in Christ. Paul writes in Galatians 3, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, 'Cursed is everyone who is hung on a cross.'" See, we call Jesus our Redeemer because, again, there is this exchange that takes place. Christ takes sin away. He takes the old covenant away, and he exchanges it for life. And he alone can do so because he has the means and the resources and the willingness to do so. And John 8 explains this authority. It says, Jesus said, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. And now a sin has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." Again, you and I, not family. We are of no relation. We appear in the field one day out of nowhere, and as far as the master is concerned, we're slaves. And so here comes the Son, and rather treat us with contempt, he adopts us as family, and he ransoms our lives, and the gift is freedom. That's the good news. The story of Ruth and Boaz is a symbol of the redemptive grace that Christ offers. Listen to how Jesus taught it in Mark chapter 10. "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave to all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." Again, there is the redemption that takes place. Jesus says his reason for coming to earth was to be a ransom, was to be an exchange, his life for our life. And interestingly enough, how does Jesus describe his time on earth? As service. Jesus, he said, "I didn't come to earth to be your king, or to be worshipped, or to have you do things for me, or to be waited upon. I came to serve you, to be in exchange for you, to redeem you." And this is what makes Jesus such a radical king. He's like no other God. Rather than act like how we would think, he does the opposite. He takes the nature that we would never expect. Paul says it like this in Philippians 2. "Jesus, who being the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." In other words, Jesus had the power to do anything, to act in any way. He had full rights, full privileges as the Son to do how he wished. And he chose to act in submission. He chose to exchange his life for ours, and he agreed to die. And not just agree to die, but agreed to die in the worst possible way. Now, why is all of that significant? Because in verse 5, before all of this, Paul says, your attitude should be the same. Your attitude should be the same. What attitude? Taking the very nature of a servant. Exchanging your life for the life of another. Using your resources to become a guardian redeemer. To come alongside the life of another and to adopt them as close family. All right, it's confession time. When my brother and I were really young, we were fascinated with bodybuilders. I don't know why, now looking back. I can't remember. We used to buy the bodybuilding magazines as teenagers. We had barbells in our room, and every day we would work out. And as you can see, it's paid off. I mean, I have a great profile, but we wanted to be like these guys. I don't know why. We thought we would actually get there one day. This is Jay Cutler on the next slide. Okay. Yeah. He took second place this year as Mr. Olympia. He's been Mr. Olympia in the past. He weighs 274 pounds, weighing in from Massachusetts. And he is a professional bodybuilder. That means he makes his living by having muscles, right? Not by using them, just having them. You'd think a person that looks like this would be a superhero. They would make their living by lifting cars off of people. right? They would have tights and a cape because, after all, with great power comes great responsibility. But no, Jay uses his muscles to pose for judges. His muscles are for show, not for use. He builds muscle and strength purely for sport. All that strength doesn't go to benefit anybody but himself. And the reality is, I don't know, are all those muscles wasted if they never get used? Jeannie said they're ugly. I don't know. I think people are like muscles. You know, they want to be useful. We're not just content to sit and smile and look pretty for the judges. We want to flex. We want to retract. We want to lift and carry weight, right? Paul says to the Christian church, the way God designed our bodies is a model for understanding our lives together as a church. Every part dependent on every other part. The parts we mention and the parts we don't. The parts we see and the parts we don't. If one part hurts, every part is involved in the hurt and in the healing. If one part flourishes, then every other part enters into the exuberance. Paul says each member of the church is a part of a body, and each part has a role. And just so that the body isn't lacking any one component, he equips every church with all the parts that it needs to prosper. But he warns, if one part suffers, if one part isn't working, well, then the whole body suffers. You see, just like a working physical body, the church is a family. The church is an intimate community. We are called to be guardian redeemer to our neighbor, to treat each person not as a stranger, but as close family. And Christ says that happens when we follow his example of service. Because muscles don't exist for themselves. They exist to serve the body. Your eyes, they can't do anything on their own, right? They exist to serve the... Nothing in your body exists to serve itself. In fact, if something is in your body and it's acting for its own survival, we call that a parasite, and we remove it. Likewise, every Christian in the church is called to a life of service. Each member is a part that exists to serve the body. Or, as we at Walden Church say, every member is a minister. Whenever somebody asks me, what do you think my next step is for spiritual growth? Like, what do you think the next thing is for me? More often than not, I say service. It's ministry. Most Christians stay content somewhere between salvation and discipleship, and that's where they stay. And look, I don't want to talk today about works or proof of one's conviction or their salvation. That's guilt talk. That's peer pressure. But if you want to know what the next step for you might be, it's probably service. And I can't tell you what that looks like for you. I don't know. Because ministry is a personal thing. It's a calling for you. But I can tell you where it starts. Listen to how Peter writes it. This is 1 Peter 4. He says, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sin. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling, and each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others, as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. And if anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. And if anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. Now, in verse 10, that's a very interesting phrase, gifts you have received, because quite literally it is the word charisma, which is the Greek word for grace. So the passage says, each of you should use the grace you have received from God to become God's grace to others. Grace to become grace. I'll do this side. Grace to become grace. What grace did Boaz receive? Wealth, resources, land, the gift of compassion, generosity, mercy. How did he use those graces? How did he use those gifts for service? Plus, Peter says you should extend that grace as a faithful steward. That's the word we're already familiar with, oikonomos, a household manager. That's what Boaz was, right? He was a household manager. Very similar to the word Naomi calls him a family guardian, or a guardian redeemer. And Peter is taking this phrase, the faithful steward, he's taking it from a direct quote from Christ in Luke chapter 12, because he was there. He heard him say it. And so putting it all together, Peter is saying that each of us have received various gifts and graces from God, resources, abilities that we each have at our disposal. It could be wealth, it could be personal interest, passion, talent, and then we use those gifts for ministry in our oikos. Each of us is given an oikos, a household, a sphere of influence in which we are called to be managers. I want to encourage you, if you don't have your oikos card, there's some in the lobby there, or if you've put it in your Bible and have forgotten about it, it's just a simple way to write 8 to 15 people that are in your life that you need to pray for every single day. People that are just like Naomi and Ruth. People who have tried everything else, and they're hopeless. Peter says, use your gifts. Use the grace that's been given to you to be grace to others, to the people that God has placed in your care. Did you know that Ronnie Hawkins likes to yo-yo? It's one of the very first things we learned about him. And so right away, we asked him if he would like to come to the family date night and entertain the kids. Now, he might not have thought that it was hard work, or even that it was meaningful work. That night was crazy. But it was an opportunity for him to serve, to use the things that were passionate to him. We have a charter member at our church, Chester Rossi. He died some years ago. He has left a permanent legacy in our church. On his epitaph in the parking lot, it says that he was a man who truly practiced service above self. Chester was a local doctor and chemist and pharmacist. He loved to take care of people. He was a longtime member of this church. He was deeply loved by those who knew him. And he was an active member in the Rotary, where he used his gifts and his talents to serve other people. What a beautiful thing to say of another person, someone who knew the meaning of service above self. So I want to give you a math equation that should help you with what that looks like. And it's this. 1 plus 2 equals me. Not 1 plus 2 equals me. 1 plus 2 equals me. You. I could have said 1 plus 2 equals you, but then you would have thought 1 plus 2 equals me. So it's 1 plus 2 equals me. When you think of your life and your work here at Walden Church, I want you to think of this equation. 1 service. You're all committed to come on Sunday morning to 1 service, going forward in your Christian walk, just committing to what we do here as a church. Because we talked about this last week, attending service does more than just help your walk. It helps others. You know, we benefit more when you are here. Because let me ask you, if you walk into a restaurant on Friday night at the dinner hour and it's empty, and the maitre d' walks up to you and says, "Ooh, right this way," you'd be like, "I might have changed my mind. What's in the meat? Why do I want to be here?" But if you walk into a place and it's packed to the walls, and they say, "Well, it's a 20-minute wait," then you're like, "Okay, this is a good place. I want to be here." It sends a totally different message, right? Because we come not just for ourselves, we come for others, because it says something about what we believe. We support the church just by showing up. By committing to be here, we send a message to those who come and to the community. So 1 plus 2 more things. I'm going to leave this up to you. Simply put, we want each committed member to be coming to service on Sunday and then to be involved in at least 2 additional things. One of which could be a small group or a Bible study. We made that really easy for you. In your bulletins, there's a little sign-up. Starting in the end of January, we're going to go forward and have Bible studies that meet in homes, and they're going to meet for 6 weeks. And we're all going to do it together. We'll have the same messages on Sunday morning, and so we'll be just doing it once a week in your house and then doing it once a week here. And we'll just start the year off together, kind of like as a call. And if you want to pick your own group, you don't trust me, or now it's time to stick this guy with that guy and see what happens. Not that. So if you want to make your own group, that's fine. Just take your sheet and go around and find the people that you want to be with and say, do you want to be on my team? And be team captain and sign them up. That's fine. Groups are led by DVD. Nobody has to teach. At the end, you just pray for one another, and it's maybe an hour, hour and a half. Then you go home. It's easy. And then on the back side of that, I don't know if you saw this, but there are plenty more ways we really could use your help around here. The first is we got to decorate this place for Christmas. And you don't want me to do it because you ever get a Christmas present from me, you're going to know because it's going to have tape all around it and be Hanukkah paper. I did that one year. I didn't know. It was cheap. It was blue, and I just thought it was pretty. Yeah, and lights. Oh, I can't do lights. We need somebody to help with communion preparation. That's a once-a-month obligation. We need you to sample the bread and let us know what's going on with it and make sure we have enough drink, and we need you to set the table, the plates, so we need help there. Sunday school teachers, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got more and more kids here all the time, and we need somebody to come alongside these kids and teach them. Right now, Melinda has been doing it every single week, so she never gets to come to church. She needs a break. And so I know you're thinking, well, I don't want to do it because I don't want to miss church. We'll figure something out so that you don't miss church. We just need 4 or 5 ladies or 4 or 5 people that this is their passion, this is what they've done before, this is what they feel called to do. We need a team there. We need some people to teach Sunday school. Of course, we need small group host homes. We also need elders and deacons. Next year is a brand new year. Come January, we're going to fill some new slots. And so if you've been on leadership before or if you've always felt called to leadership, please go see Pete. Pete's going to raise his hand right now. There he is. Go see Pete and say, I'd like to be an elder or a deacon. I was going to tell this story, and I didn't know if I really wanted to, but I want to. So when we were in California, all right, we moved in. My wife and I got married. We moved into a condo complex. When we got there, all the doors were pink. And my wife did not want to live in a house with a pink door. So you know what she did? She joined the elders. Or whatever. What was that group called? Property board? Yeah, sure. She joined the property board. You know why? She had one objective. Paint the doors. And that was like when they said, what do you want to do around here? She said, I think we should paint the doors. She found a painter. She found a guy. They came in and painted it. And then she was like, all right, I'm done. I did. So, if there are things around this church that you feel passionate about that you don't see getting done, it's probably because God's laid that on your heart and he hasn't laid it on ours. And you know what that means? It means you're supposed to do it. I love it when people come up to me and they say, I really think that we need a veterans ministry. And I'm saying, I'm so glad you're volunteering for that. We need the TLC ministry. We have a small budding group of ladies that go around and see all of our shut-ins or people that are in the hospital. We're trying to get it organized, but it could really use some more organization. And we don't want any of those people who go off to the hospital or to have surgery, we don't want any of them to slip through the cracks. We don't want them to you don't want to be alone in a hospital bed thinking that nobody cares about you. That's just not going to happen here. If that's something that you feel called to, even the people that are here in Walden, you can see Mrs. Poston or myself, and we'd love to plug you into that. The hospitality committee, every single time we do a function there, we need people that are passionate about hospitality and setting up and cleaning up. And so that has to get done. Ushers, we always need ushers. We got to get ushers in the communion, and we need to get that all structured next year too. So if that's something that you've always wanted to hold a plate, besides dinner, we'd love to have you. And just light church office work. We always have times when we need phones answered or bulletins folded. And you can see Melinda if that's something you've been called to do. Or like I said, design your own ministry. Something that you see is not being done around here, I think that's just God laying it on your heart that you're doing it. So I think in a small little church like ours, that's easily done. Each of us has a role to play. Each of us has... I missed one. Oh, I forgot about the library. So when I made the handout, I was all done. I was finished with the handout, and I was almost ready to print it. And then I said, she will kill me if I don't put the library on here. So I put the library on there, and then I didn't put it in my notes. No. So yes, the library has... Our library has done just like a professional, real library. So we have all the labels, the cards, and all that, and it gets entered into a database on a computer, and it's not hard work, it's just time-consuming work. So again, if books and solitary study, and please go, she would love to give you the library ministry, or at least train you, right? And then maybe not even train you, just say take it and run, right? Wait, that makes it sound like it's bad. No, it's good, it's fun. She does not need my help. You do not need my help to recruit anybody for the choir. You've grabbed visitors. First-timers have been in the choir. Who hasn't been in the choir? That'd be the smaller. If you haven't been in the choir, raise your hand. That'd be a smaller, yeah, Jack. That's it. Each one of us has a role. Each one of us has a gift. Our spiritual muscles, they're not for our own enjoyment. We all have resources, and we use them for God. We use them for Him. Like Christ, we are each called to a life of service. We are called to take the graces that we've been given and to be grace to others. Let's pray.